great service. I'm so glad that God has allowed me to be able to come and work with Pastor Jones. He is a faithful servant, and I love him so much. God has just blessed me to be able to be with him. And the church here is just such a blessing. We have just been blessed since we've been here and got to know you all better. I mean, we knew a lot of you already, but we got to know you better. And I really enjoyed being at the hospital with you all last week, and it's just a blessing to be there and spend that time with you while Wayne was going through his, he was probably not enjoying it. He's back in the room getting all of that probing and carrying on while we was talking and laughing. Glad it wasn't us, amen. Oh, we feel for you.
Yeah. Amen.
Glad that everything came out.
Amen.
Good. God was good. I want to say just a word about the young lady that died. We knew her and her mother and father. She was the only child, and I'm sure it's going to be hard on her parents. She was a beautiful young lady, a very, seemed to me like just a precious daughter, and a Christian. She was at church every service, participated in the services, and I was so shocked when I saw that it was her that had been killed. I couldn't imagine. But remember the family. I think her dad works for Coke. He works for Coca-Cola. But anyway, her mother sang some, and the church sang some specials. And I think she sang with her a time or two when we were there. But anyway, it's a sad thing. I want you to open your Bibles this morning, if you will, to the book of Psalms, chapter 78. Psalms chapter 78. And I want to read several verses from verse 9 down through verse 31. And the reason for that, because I'm going to be dealing with this entire context, and I want to go ahead and read it so you'll be familiar with what the verses are saying. Psalm 78, verse 9 through 31. If you can stand, we appreciate it. If you can't, you can remain seated. The psalmist says, the children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying bows, turned back in the day of battle. They kept not the covenant of God and refused to walk in his law, and forgot his works and his wonders that he had showed them. Marvelous things did he in the sight of their fathers in the land of Egypt, in the field of Zoan. He divided the sea and caused them to pass through, and he made the waters to stand as a heap. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. He clave the rocks in the wilderness, and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock, and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Yea, they spake against God. They said, can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flags for his people? Therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth, so a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel, because they believed not in God and trusted not in his salvation, though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them of the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought in the south wind. He rained flash also upon them as dust, and feathered flies like as the sand of the sea. And he let it fall in the midst of their camp, round about their habitation. So they did eat and were well filled, for he gave them their own desire. But they were not estranged from their lust. But while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of God came upon them, and slew the fattest of them, and smote down the chosen men of Israel. Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you and praise you, Lord, for your mercy and your goodness that you have shown not only to us, but all down through your word. You have shown mercy to your people. Father, today we know that you are the same God that you were then, you are today. We can trust you. We can rest assured that you will provide our needs. Now, Lord, I pray as always that you hide me behind the cross. Help me to decrease as you increase in the message. Help me not to block the view of the cross today, but may I magnify you, and may we see Jesus in his name. Amen. Amen. Thank you. You be seated. Thank you so much. I want to speak this morning on can God. Can God.
All right.
Now, I want to let you know that Israel, from the time they came out of Egypt all the way through, were a rebellious people. God had to deal with them all the time. They were always failing and always murmuring, always complaining, always never satisfied. They were always having issues. And here in this account, we can see just how bad they were, actually, how bad it became. And how God had to deal with their rebellion in his own way. Now, what we need to do when we look at Israel as a nation and the things that were going on with them, we can't apply that to our nation. Some folks try to. But you can't apply the nation Israel to America and somehow think that that's going to fit, or you can use what God has said to Israel and apply it. No, it's not that way. Israel was God's people. They were God's chosen nation. And America is a secular nation, and these things that apply to Israel do not apply to the nation of America. America is a secular nation. You probably would be more right applying it to Nineveh or somebody like that. That was a secular nation. But what we can do, and what God intended us to do, is to take the nation Israel and apply it to our own Christian life as a type of the Christian life that we are walking in or involved in today. So when we look at how God dealt with the nation, we have to look at that as God, how he deals with us in our Christian walk, and how we act in the same way many times that they did and fail to follow him completely. It shows how God had been so merciful. Can you imagine how merciful he had been to Israel all the time? And the same applies to us. How merciful God has been to us. We can look back on our life and realize from the time that we can remember how God's mercy has been with us and been among us. And how many times he has protected us because of his mercy and not allowed us to receive what we should have received. Amen. He is a merciful God. But they did not appreciate His mercy. They did not care about His mercy. They continued to provoke God all the time, and we do the same thing. Whether we want to admit it or not, we do the same thing. But I want us to look at some 4 things here in these verses. The first thing we see in verse 9 is the cardiness of Ephraim. The cardiness of Ephraim. It says that they had bows and they were armed, but they turned back in the days of battle. Now, Ephraim was the strongest tribe in Israel at this time. Yes, sir. It was the strong tribe. It was the tribe that should be out in front. It was the tribe that should be the one that's going first and protecting the nation in time of war. But here we find them, instead of them being brave, they are now became cowards. And they had the best weapons. They had everything they needed to go to war, but they did not have any courage. You see, you have to have courage to be in the battle. Amen. You have to have courage to go forth and fight the enemy. You have to have courage if you're going to engage the enemy. They didn't have that. The Bible said that they turned back in battle. They were afraid to fight. They were afraid of the enemy. Now, what caused them to be cowards? What caused them to be afraid? We see that in the next 2 verses. The Bible says here the reason for their cowardice was first that they did not keep God's covenants. They had made covenants with God. They knew the covenants and the agreements that they had made. And they had promised to keep, but they did not keep the covenants of God. The second thing they didn't do was they refused to walk in His law. As they had promised at Mount Sinai, when God gave them the choice to take the law, we'll follow it. We'll obey the law. We accept the law. We're going to do everything you tell us to do. But now, notice how he says that. He says they refused to walk in His law. Not that they could not walk in it, not that they slipped and fell, but they refused. They absolutely just refused to walk in the laws of God. Now, does that sound like some of us? Does that sound like that might fit today or with us? We fail to keep our covenants with God. How many times have people made some kind of a covenant or an agreement with God? When they needed something, when they wanted something, and they began to try to negotiate with God and let's say, God, if you'll do this for me, I'll do this, and I'll never stop. I'll follow you. I'll go to church. I'll never miss a day. I'll give my money. I'll never hold back. I'll do, and then just as soon as everything is all right, all they have done forgot all about that. All they forgot. I never remembered that at all. Now I don't remember saying that. I don't remember making that. I don't remember. I tell you one thing, God remembered. God never forgets that. God never forgets. And there's a lot of things that people have vowed to God that they have never followed through with, that is keeping God's blessing from falling upon them. Because God requires what we vow that we do. And then they refuse to walk in His law. But there's a third thing here that is very important. Because it said they forgot all the wonders that He had shown them. Isn't that amazing? Verse 13 through 16. They forgot all of that. All the miracles that God had done. They done forgot them. And here they are now complaining, griping, going on And he talks about what it was. It says in verse 13, he divided the Red Sea.
Yeah.
You see, when they came out of Egypt, they were being delivered from captivity. Moses was leading them out, and he brought them down to the edge of the Red Sea.
Yeah.
Now, what was happening is Pharaoh was coming after them. His army was on their trail. His army was pursuing them, and his army was almost there to take over. And there immediately God opened that sea. I mean, he put a wall of water on each side. And there it stood, that big high wall of water. And he opened that path and they went right through, carrying on. Now, can you imagine how that happened? You've got to understand, this is not just a little group. This is not just a school kids. This was about 2 to 3 million people that was coming out of Egypt, and they had everything that they could get and carrying it with them, taking it away. That many people going to have to get away from Pharaoh. God opened that sea to where the walls of water were on either side, and they crossed, and as soon as they crossed, God closed it up and destroyed Pharaoh's army. They had witnessed that. These people had witnessed that. They hadn't just heard about it. They were there. They saw it. They knew what God had done. But now they've done forgotten it. He talks about the cloud in verse 14. In the daytime also he led them with a cloud, and all the night with a light of fire. Another miracle God did for them, he made them a cloud that shaded them. Now think about this. They were shaded in the hot sun of the desert by that cloud. You see, it's hot in the desert. I mean, if you've never been to the desert, you need to go, because I'm telling you, it is hot. And you get out there and you drive in the desert, you get out of the car, you know, whoo! I mean, that heat hits you in the face, and that sun coming down on your head, and about 120 degrees, and there God gave them a shade to play. Isn't that amazing? See, God is merciful. God wants His children to have the very best, to be protected, to be taken care of. So He gave them a cloud to keep the heat off of them. But it wasn't just that. It was a guide, because that cloud was what guided them. And they never stopped until the cloud stopped. And when it did stop, they set up a camp, and when the cloud began to move, they moved the camp, because it was God's way of guiding them. And then at night, what was going on? This cloud turned into a pillar of fire. And of the night, it gets cold in the desert, but there was a fire right above them that gave them heat in the nighttime. But something else that cloud of fire did. It gave them light, so they would not be completely in the dark. Even in the night, there was light. But there's something else important that many times we forget. And that is that cloud and that fiery cloud kept the wild beasts away from them. And kept them from being harmed by the wild beasts. My, how merciful God was. All that He was doing for them. And now they plumb forgot about all that. They don't remember a thing about that. And then there's a third thing He mentions here, verse 15 and 16, and that's the rock that water came out of. He clave the rock in the wilderness and gave them drink as out of the great depths. Now what's he saying? He's saying that this water that came out of that rock was like it was coming from way down deep in the ground. That good, refreshing, cold water. Man, I mean, that is something. But it didn't stop there.
All right.
Because he said he caused the waters to run down like rivers. He didn't just give them a rock that had a little drip coming out of it that they could stick their cup under, and might get a little drink. No! He let that water gush out and run down like a river, refreshing water from the depths of the earth that they could never have found even in Egypt. God was merciful. Look at how he treated them. That's how he treats us.
Amen.
That's how he treats us. We look around and we'll pay attention to what he's done. We will know that he has been so good to us. Been so good to us. I mean, how in the world could we ever forget the goodness and mercy of Almighty God? How he has been to us. So many times, when we get to desiring things and we let the flesh take over, we seem to forget God's mercy. Now look at what else he said. Now, there's a third thing, and that is, not only were they cowards, not only the reason for the cowardice was that they failed to keep God's covenants and walk in his way and forgot his law, his words. But there was a continual sinning of adding sin to sin. Wow. They continued doing that, verse 17 through 20. And it says they provoked God. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. Wow. Provoke God. Now this kind of provoking that they were doing was kind of like they goaded him. They needled him. They baited him. Yeah. Because look at what they were saying. See, it was like they were trying to just needle and goad and poke God until he would do what they wanted to do. And that was such an error on their part. Amen. Because they had no respect for who God was. No respect. They just wanted to use him for somebody to take care and give them what they wanted. Sounds like the health and wealth ministry, doesn't it? That's all they use God for. They talk about God, and all they talk about God doing is being this great big genie that you rub the bottle and he jumps out and grants your wish. That's what they think of. And they mocked at God, they laughed at God, they provoked God, and it says they tempted him in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Their heart. See, sin always comes from the heart. Yes. The heart is deceitful above all and desperately wicked, who can know it? Yeah. The sin rose up in their heart, and they tempted God by asking according to their lust. God had provided their need. Yes, sir. He had provided everything they needed. There was not one thing that they needed they didn't have. But that wasn't good enough for them. That wasn't good enough. They wanted to satisfy the flesh, the lust of the flesh. You see, James talks about that. He said, we receive not because we ask amiss, that we may consume it upon our own lust. He said the reason God don't answer our prayers a lot of times because we're asking for things not that we need, but that we just want for our own lust to use, not even for God, amen, but use to satisfy our own desires. Now that's what they were doing here. They spake against God. So they provoked him, they tempted him in their heart, and they asked for things for their lust, and they spoke against him. Look at this. This is very important. They were questioning his power. Not his willingness, but his ableness. Man, you imagine how that must have made God feel? After all he showed them, opening the Red Sea, making water gush out of a rock, having a cloud falling, and now they're not questioning his willingness to do something. Their question is his ableness, his ability. And they're saying, can God? Not will God, but can God? You know, back in the 3rd grade, I learned the difference between can and may. And I never have forgot that. I mean, it was very clear to me because the teacher clearly showed me the difference between can and may. She would always say, when you ask, can I do that? Well, you probably can. But you may not. You know, there's a difference between asking permission and saying whether I am able or not to do it. Can means that I am able, I have ability, I can do that. And that's what they were saying to God. Can God furnish a table in the wilderness? Is he able to do that? And here's where they were goading him, you know. They were trying to goad him and just pushing him and needling him and trying to get him to act, to show them that he could do it, his power. Now that's tempting God. That's tempting God when you do that. You see, they thought that they could get God to act to prove his power because they were questioning his power. Oh, so many times I think that we do that. And maybe we don't even realize that's what we're doing. But I believe we do. Because there are times when we, I believe, think God can't do something. And we act like it. You know, we say, well, I don't know if I ought to pray for so-and-so or not. I just don't know if God can do anything for him. You know, he's so far gone. And sometimes we think that also about other situations that we have. And we are reluctant to ask God because we sometimes think it's beyond his ability to perform. I don't think that maybe we really think that, but we somehow get the idea that God wouldn't do it or couldn't do it because they're in this shape. But let me tell you something. God saves people that are down to the end, ready to perish and fall into hell. God can bring a person from the doors of hell and save them and set their feet on the solid rock and put them in a position where they can rejoice and be a great Christian and do a great work for him who was right at the door of hell. We saw that happen. We saw people that God has done that with. But here was a group of folk that was wanting to satisfy their lust so bad that they were willing to tempt God by trying to get him to prove he can do it.
My Lord.
And they kept on. Can God? Look at verse 20. Behold, he smote the rock, and the waters gushed out, and the streams overflowed. Can he give us bread also? Can he provide flags for his people? They were trying to get God to prove he could do something that a rich man could do. You know, a rich man could have done this for them. But they want God, prove who you are, God. Prove that you can do this. Now, folks, listen to me. That's tempting God. Anytime you try to get God to prove something because you want something and you want, that's tempting God. Don't you remember when Jesus was being tempted and he said, thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God? because Satan had come to him and wanted him to respond to him. And he made that statement to Satan. Now, so what was God's response to their request? How did he respond to their request? Look in verse 21. And therefore the Lord heard this and was wroth, was furious. That word. So the fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel. Now I want to show you what God did to them when they requested these things because of their lust. He'd already provided them what was good and nourishing. You know, the food that he was giving them, which was manna, that rained from heaven and fell to the earth, and they picked it up every day. It was fresh every day. And it was the best nourishing food you could have had because it came directly from heaven. Amen. It says right there, he had rained down manna on them to eat and had given them of the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the poor. He was providing for them. They had the best nourishing food you could ever have. But yet, they weren't satisfied. They weren't satisfied. You see, you can't satisfy lust. You cannot satisfy lust. Never can you satisfy lust. Now look at what he said. In verse 26 and 29, God gave them what they asked. He gave it to them. He caused an east wind to blow in the heavens, and by his power he brought in the south wind. God commanded the wind which way to blow, to send in those quail. And he blew those quail in the camp, and he rained flash upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like as the sand of the sea. Wow. Yeah, God said, I'll show you what I can do. You want me to give you, I'll give you so much meat that'll come out your nose. Yeah, you eat it till you die. So he let it fall as the sands of the sea, all those quail, and he let it fall in the midst of their camp, round about their habitation. Now look, so they did eat and were well filled, for he gave them their own desire. Now that's something we need to think about. Because when we keep on trying to get God to give into our lust, many times God will go ahead and give you what you want. And what you'll find out after you get it, is that it does not satisfy at all. It doesn't help you at all. You don't get anything out of it. And what God was doing here in verse 30 and 31, he showed them that lust cannot be satisfied. You can't satisfy it. Because look at verse 30. They were not estranged. They were not deprived from their lust. But while the meat was getting their mouth, the wrath of God came back. Even while they were eating all that quail, they still were desiring other things, desiring more. They weren't satisfied. They had never stopped lusting after more and more. All right. Folks, we live in a world today where I think we fit this picture right here. We want everything. We want so much. Everything we see. I've got to have that. I've got to have that. Now, Lord, did you see fit to let me get that? I remember one time I heard a financial advisor talking about somebody he had counseled, and they were in on their head, couldn't pay the bills, and they were paying a $600 Mercedes payment. And he said, well, you need to sell that car. I said, oh, God gave us that car. I'll show you how crazy people are. He said, my wife and I prayed about that car and said, Lord, if you want us to have that car, let us be able to get financed. Lord, have mercy. And sure enough, when they got there, they got it financed. And they swore that God gave it to them. You see, the Bible says when He gives you something, there's no sorrow associated with it. Amen. Everything God gives you is sorrow-free.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
Now, if He gave it to them, there wouldn't have been a payment. Because when He gives something, He don't attach a payment to it. Amen. But you have to pay. But here they were, $600 a month. Couldn't pay it because God gave them a car. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the way we are. We say, well, I want that. Well, let me see if I can get that. I'll finagle some way till I can get that. And then we have worked 3 or 4 jobs and don't know how to get by and eventually go bankrupt and everything else because we have wanted things for our own lust when God was supplying our need. Amen. God's promise to supply your need out of His riches in glory. That means that God will take care of every need you have. David said, I was young, now I'm old, and I've never seen the righteous forsaken or his seed begging bread. And I don't care if you're a child of God, He will provide your need, but He will not give you everything you want just to fulfill a desire or a lust or a craving you have. Amen. And this goes on and on. And it don't matter how much you get, you can never satisfy lust and desire. It only makes you want more, and what you get never satisfies, and it leaves you dissatisfied and disappointed when you think it will satisfy. Let me end with this. I know a guy, I might not shouldn't talk about this, but I will. And it's not going to be anything that I don't think anybody could handle. But I know this guy that I've known for years. I haven't saw him in years. He may be dead than that. But this guy lived for sex. I mean, he was obsessed. He lived trying to find the ultimate fulfillment or the ultimate satisfaction in sex. That was his goal. I mean, that's all he talked about, all he looked for, all he tried to find. He's going to find the ultimate fulfillment or the ultimate joy. And he'd been everywhere. He'd been with women everywhere. I mean, he was always getting different women on the computer and going and meeting them. He'd been married 2 or 3 times. His first wife left him, and then he went to Miami, found a woman down there that married him, and he brought her back, and it wasn't but just a little while she'd gone. You know, I can understand that. And I don't know how he ever got her to start with. But anyway, he had money. He had a lot of rental property. He had a lot of rental houses, had a lot of apartment buildings. He had rental property in the Grand Caymans. He had money. But he could not enjoy anything because his whole life was obsessed by trying to find that one time, that one woman that could satisfy him. And the more he went, the more women he found, the more disappointed he was, and the less satisfied he was. You can't satisfy. Sin can never satisfy you. Sin will never do anything for you.
Amen.
And if people want to have the best in enjoyment as far as a relationship between the sexes, they need to save themselves until they are married, get married to some woman that is a pure virgin and live together them to all their life. That's the best you'll ever get. Amen. That's the satisfying. That's satisfying there. We think that we, in our day, because of the loose living and everything, that God is somehow holding back or holding us back from enjoying life. And we let the devil talk us into going out trying to find fulfillment. And all we're doing is destroying ourselves from really being able to enjoy a good married life. Because our young people today need to be taught that. Need to be taught that. And they certainly have enough influence the other way. But you know, I used to, I guess, think that a lot of the prostitution and that was committed by single folk. But you know what I found out? That prostitutes tell you that 90% or over of their business are married men. 90%. And so what we see is people trying to find something that'll satisfy, but you can't. You can't. It's destructive. It's destructive. Sin is destructive. So what they were saying is, God, I want you to satisfy my desires. And I want you to prove to me you can satisfy them. And when God does, they realize it wasn't good at all. It wasn't good at all. Father, in Jesus' name, I thank and praise you, Lord, that you have given us another opportunity to stand and proclaim the glorious gospel of your precious word. Now, Father, will you take the word,